In 2021, Justin Trudeau's divisive rhetoric branded unvaccinated Canadians as extremists, fueling policies that stripped them of their freedoms and fractured their lives. Backed by fraudulent science, his words left scars, broken families, lost jobs, and a nation divided. Today, lawyer Danielle Freiheit is looking into the fallout and seeking accountability. So let's dig in. It's a topic that still burns for so many Canadians, and that's the hateful, divisive rhetoric spewed by then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially as the novel modified RNA COVID-19 vaccines were being rolled out. In 2021 and 2022, Trudeau didn't just push vaccine mandates. He vilified the unvaccinated, calling them extremists, misogynists, racists, and questioning whether we should even tolerate these people.
On sent que la sécurité est accrue autour de vous. Là. On sent que c'est plus dangereux peut-être en ce moment pour vous?
On est dans un moment difficile parce qu'on est en train de prendre des choix importants. On est en train de décider que, oui, on va s'en sortir de cette pandémie par la vaccination. Puis on en connaît tous des gens qui sont en train d'hésiter un petit peu. On va continuer d'essayer de les convaincre. Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination.
Qui sont extrémistes.
Qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. C'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là ou est-ce qu'on dit, voyons, la plupart des gens, presque 80% des Québécois ont fait ce qu'il fallait faire, se sont fait vacciner. On veut revenir aux choses qu'on aime faire. C'est pas ces gens-là qui vont nous bloquer. Maintenant, on est dans une 4e vague qui est presque entièrement des gens non vaccinés qui remplissent nos hôpitaux à travers le pays. À un moment donné, il faut mettre son pied à terre pour dire « Excusez-moi, là, mais il n'y a pas de débat sur la science. »
These weren't offhand remarks. They were calculated, repeated, and followed by policies that segregated and discriminated against millions. The travel bans, for instance, the ArriveCan app, the loss of livelihoods, it all stemmed from this dangerous narrative that we were in a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And as biostatistician Regina Whittiel has meticulously detailed in her 2 books, the first, Fissman's Fraud, The Rise of Canadian Hate Science, and the sequel called The Accomplices, 3 leading Canadian science institutions backed fraudulent research and data to boost COVID-19 vaccine uptake and demonize the unvaccinated. She shows how all of this was driven by political agendas and financial incentives, with their dismissive responses to evidence of misconduct thoroughly documented. So today we're left asking, how did this rhetoric impact Canadians? And how do we hold leaders accountable to ensure this kind of hate never divides us again? I'm joined by lawyer Danielle Freiheit, who's also known as Lion Advocacy on X, and he's been digging into the real world consequences of Trudeau's words. So let's hear it from him.
When I saw those quotes from Trudeau and in that video and various follow-up interviews he gave where he really evoked a lot of emotion to bring on the hate, and a lot of people on X kind of really felt it, and a lot of members of the public are complaining about this. Like, how is this acceptable a way to speak about any member of society, regardless if they're an identifiable group or not? And we'll get into that later. So when I saw these comments and the aggression that Trudeau expressed over this group, calling anyone who was fiercely opposed to vaccination as misogynist or suggesting that they're all misogynists, racist, and that that they can't be tolerated or that they're taking up space, that troubled me a lot. Like, that really, I did not sit well with that. And so it's one thing to make those kind of threats, and then another to actually follow through with them. And then what we started seeing is that after he made those threats, he actually followed through with them. Sometimes in ways that he can't be directly liable for.
That's the question, isn't it? Trudeau's words weren't just hot air. They weaponized fear and turned neighbors against neighbors.
If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train beside vaccinated people.
He painted the unvaccinated as a threat to society and then backed it up with policies that stripped them of basic freedoms, like the travel bans, barring Canadians from planes and trains, keeping families and loved ones apart.
That there will be consequences for those people in not being able to go to a gym or a restaurant, not being able to go to a movie theater,
preventing people from attending funerals, and isolating communities. The ArriveCan app turned border crossings and travel within this beautiful country into dystopian checkpoints, with some facing harassment from private security at their own homes. This wasn't about public health. It was about control and ultimately punishment.
Those are two good examples where Trudeau would have had direct hands-on involvement. With respect to the travel ban, he got some advice from independent medical people. None of them really clearly, there's no documentation that really clearly shows they wanted the unvaccinated ban from the trains and planes. Like, that's not, if you ask most doctors, they would say now, some on the record, some off. That probably didn't make much sense. And I even spoke to a couple. They're like, yeah, I don't really know where he's going with that. And so if you ask for details on that decision, guess what they say? Cabinet confidence. I'm like, whoa. So what can you say in cabinet confidence? Like, how much leeway does cabinet confidence give a member of parliament or a cabinet member? Can you actually basically encourage criminal, can their criminal speech be protected under cabinet confidence? That's where I got a bit concerned.
not being able to get on a train or a plane.
Those travel mandates did not make any sense up until June 2022. They made zero sense. And initially, planes and trains were considered high filtered places. Like, I was scared to get on a plane initially. Then everybody's telling me, no, they circulate the air. It's actually very clean. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. I thought I always get sick in planes. Anyhow, point is, the travel mandates did not make sense, at least and especially not until June 2022. And no other country, as far as I was aware, put this on their citizens that they couldn't travel internally. So they take up space on trains. How do we don't tolerate them. They're not going to be allowed to get on planes and trains, not going to be able to travel to see family members' funerals on plane. So he made these threats and then he followed through with them all in cabinet confidence. I mean, that irked me. And I don't know a lawyer in Canada who shouldn't be a bit irked. 1%, 5%? I'm up to 80% irked. And irked to the point where even the Information Commissioner of Canada was like, why are you declaring cabinet confidence?
Scary is right. Trudeau's words didn't just hurt feelings, they ruined lives. Families were torn apart, friendships ended, and careers destroyed.
I want to stand up for the choice of those who are there for their neighbors. Not those who are risking us all going into further lockdowns, of slowing our economic recovery.
All because the Prime Minister chose to demonize a group of Canadians for their personal medical choices. But some of those targeted had valid religious or medical exemptions, yet they were still swept up in this hate campaign. And Daniel's been looking into whether this rhetoric crosses into criminal hate speech, especially for protected groups, and what he's finding is a legal gray area that demands further inquiry. Most of us have heard that hate speech laws in Canada don't typically protect vaccination status because it's not considered a protected group. But is there really a hard line here?
Well, what I found is that you can hate on people in this country. You're allowed hating people for their political views, for their vaccination status. It's legal. This country, despite the restrictions we have on speech, you're allowed, and police won't enforce and Crown won't really prosecute for hate speech in this country unless it's against an identifiable group. There, everyone's eyes start raising eyebrows. I can list the identifiable groups. They're in the criminal code, section 318, I think. 319 references the 318 definition. And I'm not a criminal expert by any means. I've gotten some experience in, helping out on different things, providing my just business kind of sense on some of these things. I'm like, well, it doesn't seem right to me, or just interpreting the language of certain. But the hate speech crosses the line when it's against an identifiable group. Now, everyone says vaccination status is not an identifiable group. There's no protections there. I'm like, yeah, there probably should be some statutory amendment there, because I think the decision to get vaccinated, I wouldn't recommend hating anybody for that. I don't think it's wise. I think there may be various reasons they don't want to get vaccinated. What I started seeing was that a lot of people who didn't get vaccinated or were fiercely, in Trudeau's words, what's the French word that he used? Fièrement? Whatever it is. Fiercely against vaccination, they actually had valid religious and medical exemptions, or medical exemptions. And we start to see that. The cases are coming out now. There was one in Alberta where, this person actually did have a religious exemption.
Trudeau campaigned on this wedge issue, riling up crowds on the election trail, turning vaccine status into a moral litmus test. And for what? To score political points while Canadians lost jobs, homes, and their mental health spiraled out of control? Daniel's post on X asked people to share their stories, and the flood of responses, missed funerals, broken families, harassment, shows the human cost of this rhetoric. We need accountability, not just for justice, but to set a precedent. No leader should ever be able to foment hate like this again. So while Daniel is at the information gathering stage of looking into all of this, what's the end game, and what is he hearing so far from Canadians?
I'm finding that people, I know people are going to hate me for this, but look, the hate speech, that is what it is. If you're not an identifiable group.
If you want to get on a plane or a train in the coming months, you're going to have to be fully vaccinated. So families with their kids don't have to worry that someone is going to put them in danger in the seat next to them or across the aisle.
Maybe there's a crowd out there who has a different view, but if you're not an identifiable group, it's going to be harder. Now, there is intimidation, there is coercion, there is threats of maybe there's other sections there that might be offside. But in terms of that, I think the real people with a claim here is the identifiable groups, people who had religious exemptions, people who had medical conditions, recognized or not. I don't care if that, because everyone's like, no one has a medical exemption to the vaccine. What are you talking about? Didn't you read the ministerial order? No one has an exemption to it. Try to find that guideline now. It's scrubbed. The government of Ontario scrubbed that exemption guideline. Don't blame them. I tried to get them to scrub it earlier, and I tried to get the CPSO to scrub it, or to at least to say, hey, wait a second, that's not binding.
So there's the mission: truth, accountability, and a promise to never let this happen again. Trudeau's rhetoric didn't just divide us, it dehumanized Canadians. And the scars are still fresh.
Businesses that choose to move forward with vaccination requirements aren't subject to unnecessary or unjustified lawsuits.
Daniel's work is a step toward healing and ensuring that no politician can hide behind cabinet confidence or pandemic fear to justify this kind of speech and these actions. If you've been impacted, reach out to Lion Advocacy on X, share your story, and perhaps help to build a case for justice. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. If you'd like to see my interview with Regina Wattil and follow other evidence-based reports on the novel vaccines, please do so at nomoreshots.ca. That's nomoreshots.ca.